NUS Lorena, a junior in high school, lived in a quiet suburb where neighbors knew each other and incidents seemed unthinkable. At least, that's what she thought until the events of the previous week. The story of her life still sends shivers down her spine at the mere memory. It all started on a Monday morning. Every day, Lorena walked to the bus stop, just a couple of blocks from her house. The familiar route took her past neat lawns and tidy mailboxes, where regular passers-by exchanged greetings on their way to work. Her stop was located at the corner of Maple and Fifth, with a modest bench in the shade of a mighty oak tree. That day, as she scrolled through her smartphone, her gaze fell upon a white van parked across the street. The vehicle looked unremarkable. No branding, no side windows, just a hint of rust that made it seem out of place in this idyllic setting. Lorena didn't pay it much attention. Maybe the owner was moving or doing some minor repairs. She boarded the bus, went to school, and put the incident out of her mind. Tuesday morning brought the van back. It occupied the same position, 50 feet from the stop, with its hood facing her. Lorena squinted, trying to see if anyone was inside, but the tinted windshield completely obscured the interior. A vague unease stirred within her, as if an invisible gaze was boring into her back, but she dismissed the thought. At 16, filled with plots from crime shows, she was used to being cautious, but she wrote it off as excessive suspicion. The bus arrived on time. She got on, and the episode faded away. By Wednesday, the van had returned with persistence. Lorena looked more closely. Same model, same rust spot on the hood, same tinted windows. Her stomach clenched unpleasantly. She glanced around, but the stop was empty. Her friend Jessica, who usually met her there, was running late. Lorena pulled out her phone and sent a message. "Are you almost here? That creepy van is back. Time 2." There was no immediate reply. She kept her eyes on the van, feigning nonchalance, but her pulse quickened. No one got out. The van didn't move. When the bus finally arrived, Lorena practically threw herself inside. That night, she shared her concerns with her mother. Her mother frowned and suggested it was nothing, but advised her not to take risks and to always wait for Jessica at the stop. "It's probably a delivery van," she added, though her tone betrayed doubt. Lorena couldn't shake the foreboding. Sleep eluded her, her thoughts revolving around the van and its mysterious presence day after day. Lorena met Thursday morning with heightened anticipation. She hurriedly grabbed her backpack, put on her sneakers, and left early. Jessica responded in the chat, promising to hurry, which calmed her down a bit. Turning onto Maple, Lorena felt her heart sink. The van loomed in its usual spot, with the same unsettling stillness. However, this time things looked different. The side door was ajar by just a few inches, enough to send shivers down her spine. Lorena slowed her pace, her fingers gripping her phone until her knuckles turned white. The distance to the stop narrowed to 20 feet when she heard a scraping sound. The van door opened wider, and there was movement inside. A man leaned out, his features partially hidden by a baseball cap. His gaze flicked past Lorena. He raised his hand as if signaling an accomplice. She glanced around and noticed another person, walking a dog about 100 feet away on the sidewalk. Wearing a gray hoodie, he gave the van driver a short nod. Lorena's insides went numb with terror. They were working together. For a moment, she froze, instincts screaming, "Run!" Then she turned and bolted. Sneakers pounded on the asphalt. backpack bouncing behind her. From behind, the van's engine roared, tires squealed as they left the curb. Lorena didn't dare look back. She raced towards her house, gasping for air. At the intersection, she saw her neighbor, Mr. Thompson, getting into his car. "Mr. Thompson, that van is chasing me," she shouted. He froze in shock, but jumped out of the car and rushed to her. "Lorena, what's wrong?" he asked, scanning the street. The van was already speeding away, turning onto 5th. Mr. Thompson took off after it, yelling, "Hey, stop!" But the vehicle disappeared into traffic. As it vanished around the corner, Lorena spotted a horrifying detail. There were no license plates, just bare brackets on the bumper. Mr. Thompson immediately called the police, and Lorena, trembling all over, recounted what had happened. Officer Daniels, a woman with a gentle gaze, listened intently. She asked for a description of the van, the man in the cap, and the pedestrian with the dog. Lorena tried her best to recall details, though the images blurred in her memory. The officer assured her that they would investigate, but the lack of license plates and precise details would complicate the search. "You did the right thing by running away," she comforted. "Listen to your intuition." The following days turned into a nightmare. Lorena didn't dare approach the bus stop without Jessica or her mother. Every engine rumble made her flinch, suspecting the van's return. She endlessly replayed the scene in her mind: the opening door, the man as gesture, the figure with the dog. It wasn't a coincidence. They were stalking her, sniffing out her habits. The thought made her sick. What was their goal? Kidnapping. The answer terrified her. Things didn't improve at school. Sharing with Jessica and her friends, Lorena sparked a wave of rumors. Some classmates whispered that she was exaggerating for attention, but Jessica stood by her. She accompanied Lorena every morning, and Jessica's father even drove them a couple of times. Her mother contacted the school, and they stationed a guard at the stop for a week. The van didn't reappear, but the feeling of threat didn't dissipate. In those days, safety seemed like an ephemeral illusion for the young girl. A week after the incident, she stumbled upon a news story on social media that made her heart freeze in terror. In a neighboring town, just 20 miles from her home, a 15-year-old high school freshman had disappeared. She was last seen at a bus stop, and the police report mentioned a suspicious white van without license plates seen nearby. Her mother hugged her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You're not going anywhere alone," she said sternly. The girl didn't argue. She wasn't sure if it was the same van, but the thought haunted her like a shadow. She kept wondering what might have happened if she hadn't run that fateful day. Had her escape made another girl a victim? Guilt gnawed at her, despite understanding that she wasn't responsible for what happened. Life went on, but with a heavy burden on her soul. Safety had vanished from her world forever. Not at the bus stop, not on the way home, not in her own neighborhood. Now she had turned into a beacon of vigilance, reacting to the slightest signals. Every passing car, every casual passerby, every rustle made her tense. She always carried a can of pepper spray in her purse, and her mother bought her a powerful personal alarm capable of shattering the silence with a siren. The police continued searching for the van, but there was no fresh news. The vehicle had seemingly vanished into thin air. The girl prayed that the authorities would arrest those villains before they struck Another blow. While waiting, she remained alert and urged her friends and family to do the same. Intuition is a reliable compass. If a situation makes you uneasy, trust that feeling and act on it. She had always considered a trip to the grocery store to be the most carefree part of the week. A complete harmony of routine. Her quiet suburb with its neatly trimmed lawns and leisurely traffic seemed like an oasis of calm, and the family market was just a 10-minute walk from her doorstep. However, last Tuesday, this familiar refuge turned into a scene of a nightmarish hour, full of tension and fear. The mid-morning was sunny and ordinary. Her 4-year-old son, Leo, was comfortably settled in the cart's child seat, kicking his legs to the rhythm of his favorite alphabet song. She picked up fresh bread, ripe fruit, and bottles of milk, leisurely moving through the canned goods section. As she turned towards the cereal aisle, her gaze fell on a man standing a couple of aisles away. He was about 40, with pale skin, greasy hair, and a dark jacket draped over his shoulders, out of place on the warm day. His cart was empty, as if he hadn't come to shop. His gaze wasn't wandering over the labels. It was fixed on her and her son. She offered a polite smile, as is customary during a fleeting eye contact with a stranger, and pushed the cart forward. Leo, pointing to a bright box with cartoon animals, asked her to buy it. "Of course, sweetie," she replied, trying to appear carefree, though goosebumps had risen on her skin and her instincts were screaming danger. At that moment, she detected movement. The man had shifted his position. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him dart behind a stack of paper towels, never breaking eye contact. She abruptly changed direction. Now diapers, wipes, batteries. At each stop, the same piercing gaze hung in the air. Once, glancing back, she only caught a glimpse of his jacket as he disappeared behind a tall pyramid of soda crates. She tried to convince herself it was paranoia. Maybe he was just looking for a product or waiting for a companion. But the inner voice insisted otherwise, clenching her stomach into a knot. Leo, confused, asked why they were hurrying. "Just let's go faster, honey," she brushed off. At the checkout, she chose a line closer to the exit, instinctively, shielding her son from the store with her body. The man didn't get in line behind her, but a couple of lanes over, she saw his silhouette. He was pretending to examine a pack of candy, his cart still empty as before. After paying, she warmly thanked the cashier and walked into the parking lot, suppressing the urge to run. The asphalt under her feet felt scorching, the sun blindingly bright. She opened the minivan door, placed Leo in his car seat, and leaned in to fasten the seatbelt. Suddenly, she heard hurried footsteps on the concrete. Looking up, she saw another man, tall, with a thick beard and a gray hoodie, approaching from 3 rows over. He carried nothing in his hands, not even car keys, and his gaze was fixed solely on her. For a moment, she froze, paralyzed. Then there was a slight creak. Someone had stopped behind her. Turning around, she found the first man. He had circled the minivan and stood 10 feet away, blocking her escape. Their eyes met. First with each other, then on Leo. Her hands trembled, her fingers clumsy, fumbling with the buckle. Leo, fidgeting restlessly, asked why Mommy was breathing so heavily. Finally, the buckle clicked. The minivan door slammed shut. The tall man stepped closer. She opened her mouth, but her voice caught in her throat. It was at that second that a couple with a stroller turned the corner. The woman was the first to sense the tension of the scene. nudged her companion with her elbow, and nodded in their direction. They changed course and headed straight for the minivan. The tall man glanced at the couple, then at his accomplice behind her. An unspoken understanding passed between them. Both turned around in unison and left, not running but with firm resolve, heading in opposite directions. The couple approached. The woman asked solicitously if she needed help. The girl nodded, but the keys in her palm rattled with her trembling. The man offered to wait until she got behind the wheel and drove off. Thanking them from the bottom of her heart, she got into the car, activated all the locks, and pulled away. Her heart hammered all the way to the main road. Without hesitation, she headed to the nearest police station. The officer on duty listened attentively to her story, filed a report, and dispatched patrols to the store, while one of the officers entertained Leo, giving him coloring pages from an old notebook. She described both men in detail, recalling every feature. An hour later, the store manager called. The police had arrived, confiscated the video recordings, and obtained clear images of the suspects, both inside and outside the store. One of the units spotted similar individuals near an abandoned shopping center 3 miles away. They were arrested without resistance. They surrendered without a fight. Later that day, Detective Harris revealed the results of the search. The first man had no identification, but his fingerprints matched a suspect in an attempted child abduction in a neighboring county. The bearded man was on probation for a similar crime in another state. In the trunk of their car, officers found rope, zip ties, and a roll of duct tape. The detective's voice was even, but the essence of his words burned like an icy shower. Leo could have been taken in broad daylight, in the midst of ordinary life. She signed additional papers, then took Leo home. The boy fell asleep early that night, exhausted by the day's unusual events. The woman spent sleepless hours, mentally replaying every minute of the ordeal. She reflected on how an invisible threat can creep so close, and a routine outing can instantly turn into chaos. What if that couple had chosen a different path through the parking lot? The thought haunted her, sowing seeds of anxiety. 2 weeks have passed. Both men are behind bars, denied bail, and now face charges on multiple counts, including attempted kidnapping and conspiracy. Other families are providing testimony these days. The detective assures her that the case looks strong, with solid evidence. Still, she double-checks all the locks, keeps her phone within reach, and chooses parking spots as close as possible to store entrances. She believed that her town was a bastion of tranquility. Now she realized safety is a fragile gift that must be vigilantly guarded, not taken for granted. If your intuition tells you that you are being watched, believe it unconditionally. Shout, move, call for help. She did just that. And thanks to that, and the courage of 2 strangers who weren't afraid to intervene in someone else's troubles, her son is now resting in his bed. She will never again take that quiet rhythm of breathing for granted. She rarely shared this story in its entirety. The events unfolded in 2015, when she was 19. Fresh out of high school, she was working part-time at a local pharmacy, a cozy corner where faces were familiar, and the atmosphere was comfortable. It never occurred to her that a sinister shadow could loom so close to her familiar surroundings. It happened in late October. Thursday evening, her night shift ended around 9:15 p.m. The air had cooled. The parking lot was deserted. Their store was nestled in a small strip mall next to a laundromat and a pizzeria, but those establishments had long since closed their doors. She stepped out, wrapping her coat tighter, and headed towards her car. It was parked under the only working streetlight in the lot, right next to the cart return. She always preferred that spot, as the light gave an illusion of safety in the twilight. As she got closer, she sensed something unsettling. A white van loomed 2 rows behind her car. It hadn't been there before. The windows were tinted with no identifying marks or brands. The engine was silent, but it seemed to harbor life inside. Her heart skipped a beat, but she dismissed the panic, not wanting to succumb to paranoia. She took out her keys and quickened her pace. Just as she reached the driver's side door, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning sharply, she saw a man emerging from behind the van. His hood was pulled low. He was silent, only moving quickly and purposefully. Instinct screamed a warning. She activated the unlock, dove into the car, and slammed the door. The locks hadn't even clicked shut when a second man jumped out from the opposite side, rushing towards the passenger door. In that moment, everything became clear. It was a coordinated ambush. The doors locked at the last moment as his fingers gripped the handle. He yanked, then punched the glass. She slammed the car into reverse, nearly hitting the cart return, and sped out of the parking lot. She didn't drive straight home. Instead, she headed to the nearest police station, just 8 minutes away. Tremors racked her body. Her words jumbled in the first few minutes, but the officers were understanding, listened attentively, and took her seriously. A patrol car immediately went to the shopping center. She described the white van and both men in minute detail, from their clothing to their facial features. An hour later, an officer returned with news that made her stomach clench. They had been apprehended. Both were still lurking in the parking lot, trying to move the van behind the building. Inside the van, police found rope, duct tape, zip ties, and a small bottle of sedative. One of the officers whispered, "It was clear that robbery wasn't their plan." They were planning a kidnapping. It could have been her. The horrifying climax came with the revelation. One of the men had a criminal record. He had been charged twice with attempted kidnapping in the past. The second was a blank slate to the system, but evidence later surfaced on his phone. Photos of the pharmacy, the parking lot, and lone women hurrying alone. Police reported that these guys had been stalking the area for weeks, waiting for a vulnerable target, someone distracted, working late, without company. That night, she simply got lucky. Officers noted that her quick reaction and her choice of a well-lit parking spot were key. It confused the hunters, causing them to make a mistake. They hadn't counted on such agility. Had she fumbled with her keys or strayed further from the light, the outcome could have been tragic, filled with irreversible shadows. Local media picked up the story a couple of days later. She avoided the cameras, but the reports labeled the incident an attempted abduction. Thwarted by the victims' quick thinking and the police, the shadows of those events faded to this day. For weeks, sleep eluded her. As soon as she closed her eyes, the face of the first man rushing towards her, or the hand of the second, reaching for the door, full of sinister resolve, would appear. At that moment, she noticed a hand reaching for the door. The woman never returned to her old job. Instead, she took a position closer to home, where the schedule allowed her to work only during the day. Since then, she never leaves her car in a remote parking space near the entrance. She avoids wearing headphones on the way to her car and invariably looks around, checking her surroundings. Both men were charged with attempted kidnapping and conspiracy. One of them made a deal with justice. The second stood trial and was sentenced to prison. It turned out that they were involved in similar cases in neighboring counties, but they were arrested on that very night. She shares this today because she understands many people are sure that something like this won to happen to them. She once shared that illusion. However, sometimes all it takes is one reckless step, one secluded parking lot, one inconspicuous van without windows, and if you are careless or just unlucky, there may not be a second chance. She had one, and it's a lesson she will cherish forever.